John,
Yes.
here's where we get into troubles. When you say undesignated, you're meaning uncommitted funds.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of other funds that we would call assigned.
Signed or committed.
Well, assigned is very different than committed.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So there's a ton of funds. Like, for example, I found we have the fund where we put money in that we get in lease payments. Mm-hmm. These are funds that the council at any one point could decide that they either had an emergency,
right,
or could decide that they had a real good project they wanted. And how would I get at that? Because here's my problem. We have a lot of money assigned to a lot of unusual things. Like, for example, I saw money assigned to the dock at Gamble, right?
Right.
That's, what, 3 or 4 years old? We don't even own the dock at Gamble now, right? But there's money assigned to it. So we have lots of these little assigned accounts. One, how do we track assignments? I can't find... Do we have it written down somewhere where each account is assigned and what it's assigned for and what is the legal bearing of that assignment?
I don't.
Or is it by memory?
I don't have that written down. It's not. It would have to be. It would have to be pulled together.
See, my reading is that when we have something that's assigned, it's available for council action, and that ought to be a separate category. I mean, leave it assigned. Now, restriction means that there is somebody either legally or it's by contract, by law, by some outside force says we can only spend it in a specific way. That's restricted. And I think part of my confusion, the problem I've been having, is we use assigned and restricted in the same category, and they're not. See, I would like to see by category how much cash we have that's assigned, how much cash we have that's restricted, and then I would love to see an annotated type of budgeting where I could look and see what the restriction is, because some of the restriction may be they're restricted only to water and sewer, but they have, within that, they have a broad range of what they can spend. Other things, can, as I understand it, can only be spent, for example, if they're grant restricted, they can only be spent on that specific grant project.
That terminology, Councilman Ford, that you're talking about relates to governmental accounting standards and the preparation of the audit report at year end.
Yeah.
And it can also be applied, but not in the same fashion, to cash.
Right.
And that's kind of what I hear you asking.
I'm asking that we follow GASB 54. GASB.
GASB 54 doesn't relate to cash. It only relates to net assets.
Right, but I would like...
This is not net assets.
Yeah, but I would like to have an agreed upon formula what we mean when we say something is. And I find assigned and restricted and all these very valuable. For example, at this point, I do not know how much money the council has available today if it wanted to spend it. I don't know. And I can't find that out from this because of all the restrictions and stuff in there. And I would like to see if we could change our mind. I mean, if a council 20 years ago decided something, we may not see it the same way. So what I would like us to move towards gradually is a system where any councilman here could look on a spreadsheet and see what's in a specific fund and what the restrictions or assignments are and by who and when. You know.
Right.
Okay.
This doesn't address your question.
Right.
You are correct. However, that net cash equity position, as Councilman Ford has stated, is comprised of cash with different restrictions on that. Either the restrictions are placed externally, the restrictions are placed internally, or there is no restriction on the cash at all. Within the operating funds, again, that we've spoken about, we've got almost $2 million operating funds. And some of that, when I do consider just standing here and looking at the general fund, that 15% number has changed, over the last couple of years. Our budget used to be around $34 million. Well, now it's not. Our budget is about 15 to 20% less. And so that restricted amount has also reduced accordingly. And so thereby giving a little bit more leeway.
Signed amount. Because there is no state law or external, it's a decision of the council to hold 15%. Moody's, for example, says 5%. Now, I would hold 25% personally,
okay.
But I'm just saying we need to be clear for me as a policymaker to understand how much money I have and what's available to use and where can I use it. And that's what I think the debate has been over the last week or two, is trying to find out where we are. That's
okay. Are there?
Before we go, let me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Question before we go. Well, obviously, there's a lot of information that we have in front of us that really isn't deciphered enough for us to be able to break out the questions that Councilman Ford is asking. It would be great to be able to say how much cash do we have. I don't know how you would put that together, but I know you can. Is it really going to tell us what we need to know? I mean, and then of course we have to make the decision about what we're going to do with it, and that I think is part of what has led us to this point now, is how much money do we have that we could rationally use to pay down debt, reduce our unfunded liabilities and those things. I'd like to see, just like Councilman Ford, I'd like to see a little easier to understand definition of some of these. And looking at all the information that you've presented here, it's a whole lot of information that frankly just confuses me. Now, when you start looking at saying this fund has 20% restricted and 10% assigned, and it's all semantics to me. How much do we actually have is the question that we need to come up with.
Okay, yeah, well, obviously, unless you're an economics major, I mean, I understand that it's going to be somewhat confusing. And I think you've broken it down to what's the bottom line here, okay? So you have certain restrictions, a certain way of reporting things that have to be done for the state level, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the same type of reporting that our city auditor insists upon?
Yes.
Okay, it's
that's right.
Right, and the terminology that you use also is pretty specific also.
Right.
So, and so specifics or the specific language that you have to give the state and our city auditor, there is for our purposes, a more simplistic type of listing that we could use, correct? I mean, does that seem fairly simple to do?
We could devise some agreed upon reporting format that council would desire, and report any fashion you wish.
Yeah. So I understand that you have to do certain things. Let me get to
I can only do 10-minute sections, so we'll cut it off now. But I'll return for the rest of this.